Two things I want to say up front. Not only will this be my longest screenplay that I've ever written, but this screenplay actually took the longest ever to write that I'm currently in the writing process for. As of this moment, I literally only have 2 pages that I genuinely think are good enough to keep in the final finished draft. But there is quite a bit of an update I want to give to you guys, and there's some background I do want to talk to you guys about this idea. I said this before, I'll say it again. I always wanted to tell an apocalyptic story, but in particular what I wanted to discuss was what happens after that, and what happens after the world rebuilds, and more specifically, what is it like to live in that time when you know for sure it's the end of the world. It's not a typical, the end of the world story where, you know, where like, oh, everything's perfectly fine and then suddenly something happens, like one of those natural disaster movies. No, this was going to be one of those movies from day one where it was going to be like from the opening shot of the film, you're in the apocalypse, and just like what is it like to live in the apocalypse, and what does it take to survive it. And this was always going to be a screenplay, by the way. There was never any doubt this was always going to be a script. I was never planning to do anything else with this idea. But that being said, there is something I feel like I need to completely mention about this screenplay or this idea. This has evolved so much, and as of fairly recently, I only feel like I finally got over the writer's block. 'Cause like I said, I had this idea ever since for a long time, and to be honest, more specifically since high school. And since I've had this idea for such a long time, of course, there were countless like drafts, and not necessarily like finished like screenplay drafts, but there was just like story outlines. And I always wanted to write the story, but I didn't know what to do. And the very first drafts I got, I kept getting stuck. And I kept getting stuck because, well, to be honest with you, I feel like the main issue I had with the original script was I feel like I was drawing out a story that was meant to be only short. And I did mention this, when I made this official that this was another screenplay I was writing. This is going to be a short. But even though this is a short, I'll be brutally honest with you guys, I think I could extend this to a feature film because I feel like I finally found enough material, or inspiration for enough material, that I could actually extend this to a feature film. Because this feature film idea could, I think, really work, because this idea I think would be very kind of unique in terms of the post-apocalyptic story. I'm not saying you guys have never seen it before, but I personally have never seen it done this way. So a lot of the inspiration actually came from a lot of other ideas I had from my screenplay series, The Genetic Revolution, where I have currently, as of right now, writing a second screenplay in the series, and I have a first one complete. But it was originally an idea and I had for this one where these people kind of come across powers, like the developing powers. They don't, like, there's no accident or anything. It just kind of happens to them, and then this is the reaction to it, and it felt much more fantastical. Like the more I was discussing the story, because it was much more specific. Like, what if a god literally gave you powers? No exaggeration of the word. What if a god gave you powers? And the more I thought about that, I was like, that doesn't work in this world. It's much more fantastical. So I feel like I need to legitimately change. But I wanted to keep that concept. So I wanted to keep that concept. But even though I wanted to keep the concept, I knew for a fact I need to disregard it from the series, so I wanted to do something else with it. And then I was thinking of the Restart series, and then I realized I had the writer's block because I feel like there has to be a unique twist, or some things have to happen here and there, and I couldn't think of a truly unique special thing to happen. And then it finally hit me. Why don't I combine the two things? Why don't I have this, like, the two ideas in one? Sure, it is the end of the world, but then after a while, what if all of a sudden after the world ends, the people who do survive are the eight? What if they're asked to restart the world? And because that was one of the other ideas I wanted to tackle, because a lot of post-apocalyptic films never really deal with the aftermath. It's always the apocalypse, it's always a regular day apocalyptic event, and then the movie is over. But in this case, I feel like I want to also discuss like how are things rebuilt with that as well, because I feel like I don't really see that in apocalyptic films too. And I want to reiterate again, this will always be a screenplay, because I just pure and simple thinking between a book and a script. Because of the length, it might be smarter to write it as a book, but to be brutally honest with you, this will be such a visual treat, I think, for everyone, that I think this would be a much better script than it would be a film, or, a script rather than a novel, and of course eventually turning it into a film. I was inspired by a lot of different films, books, and all that stuff while I'm writing this script. And I want to also mention really quickly too that even though there are some inspirations, there are some clear things that I'm just going to be upfront that I have taken inspiration from. The first thing I need to mention is the story of Noah and the flood. I was always interested in that story, and I think that was one of the stories I took much more interest in the Bible, like why it was so short, and more specifically after the flood, like how the world rebuilt itself and all that stuff. That actually got me interested, to be brutally honest. Secondly, and I think like this is the more kind of important thing, and actually an even bigger influence, because of this, all those supernatural elements that I was talking about wouldn't even matter, like someone being given their abilities, specifically if these people who survive are asked to rebuild the world and are given powers by a literal god, how would they react to it? I feel like I can't help but kind of mention that a big inspiration for this was the Prometheus film, which I think is a very underrated movie. It's not one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's not perfect, but it is a very good film, and I think it was a big inspiration for this. And I want to mention, though, in particular as well, it's almost kind of like this idea kind of low-key started as kind of like a fan of like a what-if video we got of Prometheus 2, to be brutally honest, because whenever I watch Prometheus and I want to go on to the next Alien film, which is Alien Covenant, I always think to myself, this is wrong. Like, this was clearly not supposed to be the proper Alien movie we were supposed to get. We were clearly supposed to get something else, but it just didn't happen. Because, well, pure and simple, I think the studio wasn't happy, or Ridley Scott, like, because the reception was so mixed, so they decided to do a bit of both, and incorporate both, both Prometheus ideas and Alien ideas in one, and I just think it didn't work, but that's another video for another time. That's actually another one of those movies where I want to do, like, a really in-depth thought and analysis, because of how terrible of a garbage piece of crap film that is. But yeah, those are my main two inspirations, and to be honest with you, I feel like I should mention this now, for those of you who are curious, because the thought did occur to me. I feel like I should answer this now. Especially with my superhero novel After Death as well. Am I trying to write pro-Christian novels? And I've talked about this before in other videos. I'm not trying to write pro-Christian novels, to be brutally honest with you. But what I am trying to do necessarily is kind of, if I do try to write pro-Christian novels, or I should say pro-Christian stories, whether they're novels, screenplays, or whatever, I want to do it in a way that, I'm not necessarily trying to force the message of God to you, but kind of just talk about God in that sense. I'm not trying to force a message on you, like you believe in God and all that. I might be inspired by Christian principles or beliefs, sure, but I'm not trying to force the religion on you, but just discuss topics of the religion, maybe in the film, that maybe can, I don't know, maybe it opens your eyes in a way that maybe you didn't see it before, maybe it turns you to the religion, I don't know. That's not my intention, I don't know, but I feel like I should just be upfront and honest, because, I don't know, I feel like I should just be up, because I have gotten questions about that, and I've even gotten some comments, like whether it was on my books or on YouTube here, of that being the case. So yeah, and this is obviously pretty much why I am showing you Alien vs. Predator gameplay while I'm doing this video, because, well, pure and simple, Alien was, specifically Prometheus was a big influence, so I thought it just made perfect sense to show gameplay from an Alien vs. Predator game. More specifically, what is, in my opinion, like, I think the only Alien vs. Predator game I played, and I think the one that is a lot of fun. Not perfect, but a lot of fun. Before I go, I just want to mention really quickly, obviously giving updates on the screenplays is very different than giving updates on books. I can put up specific goals and all that, and I can feel like I can give regular updates without giving away specific plot points and saying, being as vague as I can while still giving you hints at things. With books, I feel like I can do that. With screenplays, I feel like I can't. And I feel like saying a milestone of, like, I just reached 300 pages is not ideal, because screenplays are not supposed to feel like books, right? Screenplays are supposed to feel like movies, obviously, or TV shows. So when I give updates to those things, I think it would be better if I gave updates in basically collaboration in one. Basically, kind of just giving you page numbers, like when I give you an update on one, I'll give you an update on the others. So here we go. Display is officially at 22 pages that are done, that are good to go. Also an amalgamation of 11 scenes of the script that I think are good and fit for the final draft. For Snap, I have literally 0 pages. I've been writing stuff all the time for each screenplay I write. Like, I flip-flop back and forth between ideas, but I've never figured out yet enough material to kind of, like, officially put, start typing, and officially, like, even 1 page that I think is genuinely good to keep in the final draft. Same thing as Snap with the Fitness Zealot. I have 0 official written pages in the final draft. I do have material that, like, I've written, but none of it I think is good enough to actually keep in the final draft. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.